Thank you. Thanks very much. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Husain Al-Badry, and I do work for Datacom. I don't think a lot of people associate Datacom with world-leading VR solutions. So I head up a part of Datacom called the Foundry. And excuse the reality puns, I'm going to use a few throughout the presentation. The Foundry within Datacom is a part of the business that kind of operates at the intersection of creativity, business model innovation, and emerging technology. So we kind of have a mix of people from across all of those disciplines that come together, and we work both with our customers to help them on their transformation journey and how they reinvent their business in the digital world. But we also do a lot of work internally on how we kind of immerse the new things into Datacom and how we uplift capability within the business. So for those who don't know Datacom, 55-year-old New Zealand company. It is a New Zealand-based company, a New Zealand-owned company owned by a family, and 38% owned by the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. It's about, I'd like to say 6,500 staff. We gained a couple of thousand staff during the outbreak because we had to stand up a whole bunch of services in Australia for as part of our contact center business over there. But it is, it's a great New Zealand success story, and we do a variety of things in the technology realm. Now, speaking of the COVID period in 2020, I don't think anybody would have started their presentations without some sort of a comment about the year that we've had. I think within the context of extended reality, 2020 for me is a year where we thought we're going to be in a different, in a slightly different place to where we are today. Here we are in December in 2020. And the world leader in user experience, Apple, they still believe that holding a giant iPad to your face is the best way to experience augmented reality. And we do a lot of work with Apple, but there's been this hope around the Apple glasses, whatever they are, when are they going to come? And they're still not here in December 2020. We've still got a lot of the investment in this space kind of being channeled towards the entertainment industry, right? So entertainment, gaming, movies, they're still kind of dominating the scene when it comes to VR especially. But we did get a glimpse of the future back in 2016. So this is when Microsoft first rolled out their Hololens device. And it just started to give everybody that hope that actually we might be going into somewhere that's quite different. We've had augmented reality and virtual reality, and now it's all kind of coming together, and these glasses that you put on and you see a 3D space in front of you, and suddenly the Minority Report thing is starting to happen. So there was a lot of promise. This is a screen capture out of a piece of work we did with Pearson. So Pearson, large education, textbook publishing organization globally. We did some experimental work with them in New Zealand because they don't have much brand presence here in New Zealand, so they wanted to run a few experiments. The relationship kind of developed, and we ended up helping them create their mixed reality platform and some of the mixed reality applications in partnership with Microsoft. The screen capture you see here is from a video from a person's HoloLens. So you've got nursing students. So these nursing students are from Otago Polytechnic, and they're using this app which has a bunch of standardized the words escape my mind now, but it's got standardized way of diagnosing pathologies. That's the way. A set of standardized pathologies to diagnose different medical cases. And the substitute for this, the way they used to do it in the past, is they either get each other to do to act it out, or they use a mannequin, or in some universities they might go and hire some professional actors to go and do it. And so what this has done is great. It's put these standardized, repeatable, very realistic looking things. The lecturer and the students put the headset on, and they can all see the same patient in front of them in the same space, and they can run through that diagnosis together. They can see their vitals. as they're going through the different phases of that diagnosis. So, when we were doing this in 2017 and 2018, we were going like, this is pretty cool stuff. This is pretty cutting edge. And surely this is only going to like accelerate and go on steroids very, very soon. But unfortunately, and this might be the last pun that I use on reality, it does, reality hurts, I don't know if that lady was waving goodbye to Magic Leap, but, we thought Magic Leap was going to be the massive savior of the mixed reality world. There was a lot of limitations with the HoloLens, and the Magic Leap has so much promise, but we're still not quite there. It doesn't feel like we're quite there. And Moore's law is all about once you hit a place in technology, it's going to double and double and double exponentially. And we just haven't seen that in the extended reality space, not in industry anyway. And so the question that we've got to ask ourselves really is how do we do this? How do we reframe extended reality when we're talking about business applications for this technology? And to start to make sense of the whole thing, we talk about this concept of the interconnectedness of technology. I've got a person in my team called Dr. Hazel Bradshaw, and she's done a lot of research before joining us in this space, and I'm going to share some of her content today. But the premise of interconnectedness of technology is being able to think about where we've come from and where we're going to. So how do we reframe technology by looking at where we are today, which is really we've got a bunch of tools, and we are using those tools to augment what we do today. And if you look at, all of the digital transformation programs, millions of dollars being poured in around the country by big corporates, which we take part of in as well, a lot of that is spent on digitizing manual processes, archaic, paper-based things. And if you look at where we're going in the future, we're talking about augmenting intelligence. How is the machine going to be able to augment the intelligence of the human being? And I think understanding where we've come from, where we're going to, is important because if you look at the technologies that we've got at the moment on a continuum of things that are really established like cloud computing and big data, all the way to things that are super experimental like quantum computing, over a time horizon, there are some connections between those technologies. So it's not like each technology is isolated, even though you've got these kind of silos to that view. It's not like they are isolated. And so you kind of have to understand what are the things that have happened or need to happen, and then how do we connect them up with these other things so that we can realize the value of where we want to head to in the future. So put this in context. So mixed reality, as an example, is something that we do have today, right? So Microsoft have rolled out the HoloLens 2, and I think that realm is continuing to move forward. But the reason why we got to this point is because of all the evolutions in cloud computing. So there's so much evolution happening in cloud computing, which is enabling data to be stored in the cloud, applications to be presented in the way that they are presented today, the mobile technology revolution and app revolution, big data, we're able to crunch large data sets, we're able to store those data sets on the cloud and represent them in different ways. Augmented reality and virtual reality, that's contributed to the creation of mixed reality. Digital twins, there's kind of a loose connection there between, how is the creation of digital twin going to accelerate the mixed reality space. And ultimately what we're looking to create is this concept of spatial computing, where you're going beyond the screen, you're detached from the screen, and the space around you is fully, the space around you is the screen. And in order to kind of get there, there's a few other things that have to be connected. So you got to think about, facial recognition and computer vision. All of that starts to play into how you go beyond the screen and how you enable spatial computing. Your natural language processing and being able to actually have a conversation and have an intelligent assistant assist you in that interface is, the Jarvis kind of concept is really important. And that might flow on to vehicles, and autonomous vehicles might be able to accelerate that as well. So this is kind of showing us that there's a lot of connections that would have to be made in order for us to realize the value of a technology or to really accelerate that technology. So when we talk about going beyond touch or beyond the screen, and we're talking about enabling spatial computing, then suddenly there's all these other considerations that we should be thinking about, but we're not today. We're just creating these siloed experiences. So you got to think about your identity. Is there an avatar involved? Is it your personal digital twin? How do you overlay that digital twin concept with identity? Your connectivity, how do you optimize your cloud and your edge as connectivity starts to get faster and faster? The fact that we got so much sensors and devices coming up all around the place, and ambient technology. So how do you put that into your considerations? How do you roll in AI that can predict and can offer insight as you go? And if I kind of look back to this application, just to kind of put it in the context of an application that we have done in industry, then really you can do a lot more than what we have here. What you can do is when you start to take it to the next level and you start to connect all the tech, is you start to think about, well, rather than pre-recording these patients, because all the patients that we had in the other application are 3D recorded people, volumetric video, what if that patient was a digital human? And obviously all credits here to Soul Machines, our Kiwi leaders in the space. What if this was a digital human? What if this was a digital human who can read your sentiment and who can follow your eye movement? And suddenly you're not just doing the diagnosis by looking at this, patient who is, pre-recorded. You're actually training them on you're training students on having these personal relationships and personal skills as well. So you're kind of starting to cover more ground by bringing all of these things together. You're embedding humanity into the whole experience. And what if you kind of took it to the next stage and took those goggles into the hospital scenario? So then suddenly your trainee is walking in, and because of the sensors that are around them, because of the machines that are around them, and the connectivity that's there, they're able to start to overlay those vitals so they can have the same experience that they had in the training scenario right there in the hospital. So there's really, there's a heck of a lot of considerations that we've got to have when we're creating these experiences, and I don't think we're doing that today. Now, that's all a pretty technology-oriented view of the world, right? So the interconnectedness of technology is about how we bring the technology side of it together. Now, in the industry where leaps happen is when the experience that's offered by the technology can be crossed over with a revolutionary business model. And so at the intersection of the business model and the experience, that's when you start to get leaps forward. And so that's really where we've got to get to. We've got to look at what are those things about the people side and the corporate side that we need to kind of bring together and blend in order for us to drive that the productivity promise of extended reality. And shameless plug for the team, but in Foundry we've kind of got a methodology for exploring that. And we call these moments, when we kind of find that intersection, we call them value hacking moments. And so our whole thing is about how do you actually dream big and then hack your way to figuring out where that value might exist from a business model and an experience perspective. And if I bring it back to the context of what we were talking about with Pearson and the work we did within there, the promise could then become, rather than just purely around training in the classroom, is how do you provide access? So how do you provide access to practitioners, to nurses, to doctors, and how do you make that open and accessible for everybody? So what is the ecosystem play that you can create from a business perspective? If you look at remote training, how do how do you start, and this is a hot topic right now in 2020, how do you start to scale expertise? So how does the business model then go and revolve around scaling expertise? And that's going beyond the technology and going to how do we create those scalable business models? So without kind of talking for any longer, really what I wanted to say is the promise of mixed reality, I think it's kind of still there, but we've just got to think about a few things to help us move things forward. So we've got to think about how do we evolve these experiences from being siloed experiences, which is what we have today in the extended reality world, to experiences that are interconnected. That's me.